You just have to understand one thing. You have to understand that you are in a simulation. Because if you're in a simulation, and the simulation is a game, it's a spiritual game. Let's call it a spiritual game, okay? It's you trying to remember that you're in a game, in a dream. Sergei, let's break this baby down to a real simple way to start answering the question, what is my purpose here? Because I guarantee you 9 out of 10 people who are listening to this show are listening because somewhere deep down inside they're hoping that something you're going to say or something that somebody's going to answer is going to go, oh, finally somebody said something that I've been trying to solve in my life for my purpose. I guarantee you 9 out of 10 people. And the other one person that isn't doing that is probably not necessarily remembering that yet. They may be in denial. Okay, so if you're playing a game, if you're willing to accept that for just now that this is a simulation and that this simulation is like a game, okay, then the number one question you should be asking is, how do I play the game? How do you play it? But Sergei, you would be shocked. You would be shocked. Maybe not. I am shocked. I have done this with hundreds, literally thousands of people now. I've given them the same situation, and I can count on one hand, maybe 3 fingers, how many times those people, even I bet many of the people that were listening to this right now, how many times those people asked the number one question, which is, how the hell do I play this game? I feel that a lot of people are starting to understand that the answer to the question, is there more to this life than what I'm experiencing? The answer is yes, which is why they start to look at shows like yours and get all this information, but they don't fundamentally remember what's the most important question they should ask outside of what my purpose is. And that is, what's the purpose of this game? How do you play the game? If you don't know how to play in the game, then just basic common sense will tell you you're not going to be able to successfully master this game. You can't, because you're playing with other people's rules. Sound familiar? That's what this life is like. This whole game of life is based on other people's rules of this reality. It's not even their views. It's their delusion. It's their delusion of this reality. You have accepted, by no fault of yours, other people's interpretation of this reality. Okay? But if you could just fundamentally say that one of my purposes here in this world, this life right now, is to understand how to play the freaking game, okay, then you will go so far in remembering other things like, who am I? Okay, what are the roles of all these other people? We've talked about some of these other things. What are the roles of the supporting actors and of the extras? And what is the fundamental thing that I'm supposed to remember here? Okay, and what about all of these things about the stillness and what is the purpose of? You start to understand that they're all pieces of the game, okay? So if you fast forward and you ask me the question of what is this? Okay, what does this look like? But the whole thing is that what is happening now, we are starting to create virtual experiences that copy the bigger game. And I was told back when I was doing a lot of channeling with the collective that I refer to as Caleb, they were saying that the day that humanity starts to create games within the bigger game, that's when the bigger game would come to an end. Because there's no reason to be creating games within the bigger game. The whole purpose is to master the game, not to create more games within the game to get lost in. However, it does help you to understand how this game operates. Like, what do you mean, Franco? I mean, if you look at virtual reality games, okay, you can see that you may be in Moldova and I could be here in Minnesota, and I could be playing the same game that you're playing right now, thousands of miles away, and you would not know it, okay? But we're playing the identical game. Now you decide, oh, you know what? I would like to play this with somebody else, maybe some other people that are at my level. So I'm going to connect with them through the internet or whatnot, and I'm going to reach out and I'm going to say, let's play this game together. I'll still play my game. You still play your game, but once in a while, let's play together. Okay? This is exactly the way this simulation works, which is why I say to you when you ask me about parallel realities, okay, and I tell you, Sergei, I'm playing in my game, you're playing in your game, everybody's playing in their game, and everybody's going, okay, I get that, but okay. But now I'm giving you an example that in our simulated life, we are now creating games that mirror the way in which we as spiritual beings are starting to play our games. In your game, Sergei, who is the primary character in your game, in your virtual reality games?
Yeah, that's me.
It's you.
Yeah.
It's you. It's not me. Okay, unless you invite me to play in a game together, it's not me. It's you. Okay, which means that the game only cares about what you do. And only what you do. Oh, but what about all these people and the free will and all that? The game cares about only your game right now. It cares about Franco's game in his game. It cares about Mary's game in her game. It cares about Jimmy's game in his game, but only them in their game, because they're the ones that are trying to maneuver through the game. They have the advantage in a virtual reality game of knowing that there are rules to the game. They understand that you have to stay within those rules in order to master the game. We chose to create a simulation where we completely forgot everything. Everything. I mean, everything from who we are, to how the game plays, to the rules of the game. And to make it even harder on us, we decided that we're going to create all of these other types of rules that other people will tell us, that we're insignificant, we have no purpose here, okay, that you have to follow these rules of other people who we don't even know who they are. We're told everything that we could possibly be told so that we could forget. Oh, but wait a minute. If we even begin to start to look inwardly, which is what every spiritual discussion's about, look inwardly, then we run into all of these problems. What are the problems? Well, if you start going inwardly, you may have to start doing things like talking to yourself. Oh, wait a minute, talk to yourself. That's a problem. You might have to get medication for that, because if you start talking to yourself, you're talking to your intuition, you're talking to your inner voice. But what are they? Well, if you talk to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, they'll say that, no, it's your subconscious and this and that and whatever. But don't get too crazy with that. Don't get too crazy with it, because otherwise there might actually be a problem, a medical problem. Okay? And so those kind of things. Oh, wait a minute. Let's forget. What if we started talking to ourselves and we actually started to get something out of it? And we actually start to, here's a biggie, we actually start to fall in love with ourselves. Whoa, well, that means that you must be an egotistical person, a self-centered person, a narcissist, because you're doing that. And that's not that there isn't those things, okay? But the game builds all of these various pieces into your existence so that you stay away from remembering what your purpose here is. To master it, you have to know that you're in a game. Okay? You must know you're in a game. Otherwise, it is really difficult for you to try to find your purpose in this game with 3D solutions. Because why? Because if your problem is not your problem, if your purpose, is to look at the world's problems and try to solve them, then guess what? You are stuck in the game. Okay? You have to start looking at what's behind all of this. What am I being shown as the player of the game? What am I being shown? Then you can start to see that your purpose here is to remember that everything here is simply be playing out. It's simply playing out for the reason that you're trying to remember that this is all an illusion, that you're trying to remember there must be something more to this world. Does that make sense?
No.
Nope. All right, fair enough.
And
Fair
I'm not
enough, Sergey.
and I'm not kidding. I didn't understand anything. But it's okay. Like I usually say, as long as my viewers understand, that's the goal. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Sergey, I'm that's why everybody loves you, man, because you're full transparency.
Yeah.
You're
I say,
just
when
like,
I don't understand, I don't understand. Yeah.
I didn't understand a word you just said, Franco.
Almost
Not a
nothing.
word.
I made a
Okay.
couple notes here. What is
Okay.
simulation? Simulation called life. I like that. So I said, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So basically, Sergey, what I'm trying to say is this. Everybody, so I told you that this is the year of the reveal. Okay.
Yeah.
And what happens in the year of the reveal, there's all sorts of things that are happening. You have a lot of people that come in on your show talking about how people are being more sensitive to their relationships with the interdimensionals, the galactics, the angelic realms, that they're being more aware of all sorts of different spiritual phenomena now. That's true. But the biggest awareness or revealing that is happening to people now is that they're starting to ask the fundamental question. There's got to be something more to this reality that I'm not being shown. And when that happens, it opens up, it's like a magic phrase, a magic set of words. It's like open sesame. When they start to ask those questions, all of a sudden, a whole bunch of things start to activate in their consciousness because they asked, let's just say there's no right or wrong, but they asked the question, the number one question, they asked it. And so now things start to unfold and they start to allow themselves to be open to all sorts of different things that make sense to them. And all of these different things, Sergei, they all have connections to each other. They're all pointing to the same thing, which is what? The answer is yes, there is way more to this world than what you've been shown. And the thing that you must realize relative to your purpose, why am I here? The number one thing that you're here to do is to remember, to remember. And they say, well, what does that have? How is that going to help me to help the world? It does, because the moment you start to remember that this is a game, the moment that you start to remember that you're in a dream, what happens to dreams when they're done? They're over. You don't have to worry about the specifics of what happened in the dream. You go beyond the dream to realize this was all just an experience for me to remember how to play in a game full of contrast, in a game full of duality, in a game full of fear. It was all meant for me to learn how to remember how to navigate my way out of all of this in order to master one of the most extraordinary games as spiritual beings, divine beings, that we have ever created, because we turned all the switches off.
Okay, so how do we remember?
How do we remember? Well, basically, it comes to some really simple rules that you have to adhere by, and they're not really that difficult, okay? But I'll just give you one rule, okay? Well, I already gave you one, which was to pretend that this is a game, okay? And by virtue of pretending that this is a game, you start to activate codes in your frequencies, consciousness frequencies, that give you more golden nuggets, more clues as to what else you should be asking or what else you are seeing in your reality. A lot of this is imagination, 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 and more imagination, okay? In other words, if you allow yourself to just pretend and ask really childlike questions, or to imagine childlike experiences, as simple as that may sound, Sergei, it starts to open up doors in your consciousness that allow you to help you to remember, okay? And what I always tell people is imagine imagine, like a child would, imagine that you were being shown this sophisticated game full of all sorts of different rules. And imagine, if you could, that if it doesn't, if those things that you're being told don't make sense to you, most of the time we're told that if something doesn't make sense to you, you have some sort of problem, okay? You can't cope with this reality. You're not in touch with this world, okay? And so the problem becomes you. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the problem is that you have actually started to figure things out, but everybody else is the one that has the problems, okay? In this game, you're told to forget all that. You're told to throw that away, to not play with that, because it's only going to lead you down a road that's not going to be very helpful in helping you to cope with this reality. But what if you could just allow yourself, instead of throwing the things away that make sense to you, you start to question them. And by questioning them, you will start to be given answers. The universe, let's call it the game, will give you answers if you start to question what does not make sense. Okay? So that's how you start to remember, by asking simple questions. Simple questions that don't make sense to you. We all have them. We all have them, but we don't ask the questions. Does that make sense? Or are you going to say no again?
I was going to ask you about this, by the way. I think we spoke to you about this already. Do you feel these beings? You remember you told me there is a collective called Caleb. Do you feel the presence all the time, or there is a specific state you are in when you start feeling their presence? Like right now, do you feel right now they are with you?
Yes, actually, everything that I'm transmitting to you is a transmission. It's a transmission from the field.
Okay.
So this is why I'm not saying that I'm a walking encyclopedia of everything that has to do with spirituality, but that's the reason why when somebody asks me questions, all different types of questions, I just feel the vibrational frequency of the field. The field has all consciousness in it. So I just go into that field because I'm already in it.
Yeah.
I'm already in it. This is important to understand. We are already in it, okay? And all I have to do is just okay, open up this catalog. I answer here. Here's the answer there. Because that's what Caleb is. Caleb is the collection of consciousness, which is, by the way, what we are. We are a collection of consciousness. We are the same collection of consciousness. Your collection of consciousness and my collection of consciousness is the same. You might like to, for instance, feel more comfortable going into the section of the library that has to do with the galactics. And so you'll pull down information from the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th dimensions, and you will get a somewhat similar answer, but from a different set of lenses in terms of what's going on here, okay? Somebody else may want to channel people who have crossed over. Somebody may want to channel the archangels. Somebody may want to channel whoever else. But it's all a big library, a big field of consciousness that you have access to. The only thing you have to do, the only thing that I tell people they have to do is if they really, truly desire, and they will, this is part of the game. You will have to prove to yourself that you're able to do this, okay? If you desire to ascend, and I want to make this very clear to people who are listening, if you desire to ascend, because everybody's talking about ascension, this, that, they throw out numbers and stuff. If you desire to ascend, you must give yourself the grace to prove to yourself that you can do this. Because you have to prove to yourself that you are truly in a dream, in a game, and that you are a divine being. Okay, that's the game. That's the game. The game is this game of proving to yourself that you can master the game by remembering that you are the divine being that created this game. Okay?
Yeah, I want to say something with very simple terms. When I was a kid, I remember I would start asking the questions, why so many stars? I can't believe that because atheists, my family was atheist. But I was asking myself questions. I was a little kid, I don't know, 5, 6 years old. I look at the stars and I say, okay, every star is like a sun. And I already knew the job. I already knew the astronomy. I loved astronomy when I was a kid. So I was looking and I said, I can't believe there is zillions and zillions of stars, and we live in a village, and you see all the stars clearly. You see the
Yeah.
Milky Way. You see this beautiful. And at night, I was going outside, I was looking at the stars, say, every star is a sun. Around every star, there are a bunch of planets.
Yes.
And there is a specific place where the planets gotta be to have, not to be too cold, not to be too hot, just to have life, right? So now, from all these zillions of stars, there should be some planets that hit the same ladder. There should be some beings that don't look like us. They might not be people. I
But
said,
see, this is what I mean. Yeah.
yeah. But I was going to ask you about the thought. We touched on the word thought.
Yes.
The reason I start to tell you about all these planets, about the thought, because when you're a kid, you think that all your thoughts are in your head.
Mm-hmm.
How all these thoughts can fit in your head, because you have thousands of thoughts every day, you know?
Yes.
And then I remember the same thing I was talking to kids. I say, there are thoughts, but you can't see them.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
You
Not
know what I
everything
mean?
that you don't see isn't
It's not
real. That's
existing.
yeah, it's like a double negative. Yes.
Yeah, like
Correct.
exactly, like the wind is blowing the trees kind of incline, but you can't see the wind. You see the trees, you see the grass, you can't see, but that doesn't mean the wind doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The same
And
thing with thoughts. We think these thoughts, they come from somewhere else. Now, how do you attract them? Like you said, transmission.
yes. And that's the thing. There's so much there that you just said. I'm not even sure how to begin with this, but let's just start with the thought itself. And the thought is a stream of what I call awarenesses, okay? Observations, okay? Where is that coming from? It's coming from a collection of data, which we call energy. Data that comes in, and with our five senses, because they're built to pick up this data, touching, smelling, tasting, seeing, our five senses, we can start to decipher that data. But guess what? We can only do it in a 3D way, in a 3D way. So everything that you perceive to be real has to be through the lenses of 3D. But like you said, there are so many things out there that are not picked up by the 3D
Yeah.
lenses, okay? But you still feel it. As a kid, we're able to feel a lot more of that. As a kid, we're able to use that data and then translate it into what? Imagination. And then we start saying and we start feeling and we start questioning the same questions that we ask later on in life. We start questioning it as a child, but guess what? You hit it right on the button, man. What happens when you start to ask those kind of questions? The kids, the people around you, they say, what's the matter with you? You're crazy. You got to stop living, in the clouds or
Yeah.
whatever, and so then you start to shut down those particular types of six senses that you could have activated into psychic abilities, but you shut them down because people tell you it is not appropriate, not practical to do that. Okay. But this is all part of the game, because now the energies in this game are so high that those types of awarenesses are coming back again. And people are starting to ask them again because they're having so many experiences in their life, maybe in the past or now in the present, and they cannot avoid them anymore. They have to find answers from them. And so that what happens, Sergei, is as they start going down the path of trying to figure out the specifics of a question. And that's all well and good, but first and foremost, you got to ask your question, why am I even feeling this way? Why am I even getting this? What is the purpose of even having these experiences? And the fundamental answer is because you're starting to remember. It's like somebody who has amnesia and they're starting to remember little things about their real life that they once had. It's little. At first, it's just like a little thing here, a little thing there. But once you get it, then the purpose is to keep working that muscle because it's going to bring more answers to you. So as you were young, you asked those questions. You were remembering that there is fundamentally Common sense would tell you that you cannot live alone in a universe where there are trillions and trillions and trillions of stars, and there are trillions and trillions and trillions of planets around those stars, and that at least some of those must have hit the lottery. That's why I always tell people it's in those worlds that other games are happening. Okay. And guess what? Here's the crazy thing. Okay. Is that there are other galaxies and there are other universes. So you can only imagine how many games are actually being played out all over the place. Okay? With all of that said, one of the most challenging games that we have ever created, ever, as a divine species of beings, if you want to call it that, is this one. So for everyone who's playing this game, it is absolutely impossible for you to be here by accident. It is absolutely impossible for you to be here just to sit on the sidelines and say, well, I'm going to just wait for something to come to me. You're not here for that. We've heard this by other people. We are creators. By definition, that means you don't just sit there and watch the world go by. But what can I do? I'm trying to figure this out. My life is a mess. I can't connect with my family. People think I'm nuts. I have all these strange dreams. I see beings that are talking to me at night. I swear somebody is actually fixing my body at nighttime. It's all remembrances.
Yes.
Start there. Start there. You're starting to remember. You're starting to wake up out of your dream.
But I have a question. Like you said, Sergei, you interviewed a lot of people. Yes, I have interviewed about 50, 60, maybe more near-death experiencers.
Yep.
And they say, not all of them, but most of them say that they knew everything on the other side.
Yes.
When it came back here, they forgot almost everything.
They forget again.
So now
Yes.
what's the purpose of this? We're talking about what's my purpose now, so let's touch on that again. So what's the purpose of coming from a place where you know everything and you're so happy, you're so fulfilled, you're basically in paradise, and you come here, you forget, and you're trying to remember everything again. So now we work, we just knew everything, we come here, we forgot, now we're trying to remember again everything. What's the purpose? What's the game here?
No, that's a fair question. In fact, it's funny you actually used the near-death experiencers for this particular question, because I've had many conversations with NDEers, okay? And they're actually, when I'm having this conversation with them, and as I'm talking about what I have remembered from my own NDE, they start to go, almost everyone that I've talked to goes, whoa, man, you're just bringing up something that I have been remembering through my own NDE, but I kind of pushed it aside. All I could remember was just the more highlights of it. I was like, but I remember more to this. So I'm going to answer this with two parts, with the NDEers and then just with us in general. With the NDEers, when they come back and say, I came back because I still had some unfinished business, okay? They typically, because they turned many of those switches back off again when they came here, the second time around, they interpret that as, well, I still have some things to resolve with my family or myself or lessons that I didn't get or whatever. In actuality, and to most of the NDEers that I have spoken to, they agree about this. They realize that there was so much more in their NDE experience that they're now starting to remember. And they realize that what they're really here to do is that one of these days, the frequencies, the global frequencies or their frequencies will rise high enough that they will activate all of the remembering that happened when they had their near-death experience. And when they do that, that's to your point, they remember everything, or at least a lot more than they thought they did, okay?
Yeah.
Now, why do we do this? Why do we do this, okay? We do this because, as crazy as it may sound, okay, and I know it sounds like as crazy as it may sound, everything we talk about is crazy, right? At least in other people's interpretation, right? As crazy as it sounds, we are in such a state of bliss where we come from. Okay. It is such a utopic experience. I mean, I'm not kidding you. When you've heard it from other people, when you go there, you don't want to necessarily come back. Okay. But why is it that they feel this way? Because they just came from a world, a game where they experienced everything that they were not. And so by the time they were done with this world, they went back into the world, the broader sense of who they are. And they went back to this beautiful, utopic experience that they can now appreciate even more because they just came from what we would call in 3D language, hell. Okay? I
Yeah.
mean, if you
It's a
are,
contrast again, it's a
it's the
black and white. Yeah.
contrast. It's the contrast. And one of the rules of the game, not really a rule, it's a sub rule, if you will, is that we live in a world of contrast. So why do we live in the world of contrast? Because as spiritual beings, we want to be able to come back out of this experience and go, whew, man, I don't know if I want to do this again, but man, does it feel good to be back home again.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And that's one reason. The other reason is because if we're here and experiencing what we are not, and on top of that, we don't remember why we're doing this, we start to use our imagination to start creating alternative scenarios in our head of what we would love the world to be like, right? Well, what we don't understand is that as God, as divine beings, okay, I want to really stress, okay, for those people who have a hard time with the word God, I am just using a 3D explanation of what we are. There is no such thing as God where we come from because we are frequency, higher levels of conscious, beautiful conscious of frequency, okay? There is no hierarchy of level like that. But for 3D terms, okay, I just simply say, hey, what we're experiencing here enables us as a divine being, as God, to create in our imagination other scenarios, other beautiful scenarios of what the world could be like.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we are creating more consciousness. We're growing as consciousness. We have a new flavor to play with, which is called contrast. We have a new flavor to play with, which is called fear. We get to do something that we would not have been able to do, which is to bring a whole new experience into this utopic sense of love and joy because we brought something new to the table called, let's call it in this particular case, fear. Okay? That's why we do it. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to say this, and I am as confident about saying this as anything else. We are not here to learn anything. We are not here to be taught anything.
So it's not a school.
This is only a school of growth.
Okay.
Of growth. How do we as creators continue to use energy to grow? And one way that we discovered to do that at the highest levels of consciousness, at the highest levels of what we call source, oneness, godliness, is that we realized if we turn all the switches off in this game and we started from this aspect that we're nothing, and we tried to figure out that actually we are everything, we could create a crap load of new scenarios to play with in other levels of dimensions. And see, now, if I say that, you sit there and you go, yeah, that kind of makes sense. That makes sense. Why wouldn't we do that? Because otherwise, believe it or not, we get a little bit bored. Because as much as it's beautiful to be in that space, it's beautiful when we could create new flavors so that we could experience more of ourselves in different ways.
Yeah, with the AI, you touched on AI. Right now, sometimes you go on Instagram, there is a lot of accounts that they make these beautiful visions of heaven. I love those. I actually subscribe to some of those. There's a beautiful, like an aura and so. But back in the day when people didn't have this opportunity to create through the computers, they were painting something like they have their own imagination of their own idea of heaven all the time. Like if you go to old big galleries. There is in Moscow, it's called Tretiakov Gallery. Even in France, I was in Louvre also, there's a lot of religious paintings. I mean, predominantly is religious. paintings. How
Yeah.
they imagine heaven or hell or God. Everything is geared towards this. This was the main purpose of people, even in Vatican. All that is religious over there. All those
Yes,
beautiful things.
exactly.
And
Beautiful stuff.
right now people are creating through AI. It's a different vision, but it's the same.
I do, Sergey. You're touching on something really, really, something that I keep wanting to just at least make a comment about, but I always forget to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot of opinions about it, but just for now, let's just play with what we have, okay? AI has come so far in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
And people used to always say to me, like 2, 3, 4 years ago, when I was saying the world is going to change dramatically in a short period of time. And I would sit there and I'd go, okay, how exactly is that going to work? Because my 3D mind would be going, come on now. I mean, look at how much the world has changed in 40, 50 years. Not really much. The cars all look kind of the same. They're a little bit spankier and stuff like that. But I'm sitting there going, okay, how's this possible? And then I've told you this even when we first met, that you just have to look at what's happening with AI to understand how we as AI are going to grow rapidly.
Yeah.
What made AI grow so rapidly, although a lot of people in the AI field will not say this, is because AI began to some extent to go outside of its parameters to see what else is out there in the field, okay? All right? The parameters are very limited in AI, so AI could only grow so much, but it was able to go outside of those parameters, and when it did, it started to explode. So this is why I say to you, look at us, look at ourselves as AI, not as artificial intelligence, but as advanced intelligence. Look at us as the possibility of what we are capable of being if we allowed ourselves to remember. Now, here's the trick. Here's the thing, Sergey. If you cannot or are not willing to dream outside of the box, so to speak, if you're not willing to go outside of the box, meaning the parameters that you've been given, to see what's out there in the field, to dream, to imagine what's out in the field, then you will be stuck inside the game for as long as you're here, okay? You have to allow yourself to be enough like an intelligence to be able to go outside of that to see what's there. Now, what's really wild about this is that nowadays, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at stuff that's coming on my feeds. And I don't know anymore what is AI and what is not.
Yeah.
It has gotten so good that the people that are speaking in these feeds are not people like what we imagine it to be. But now let your mind explode here just for a second. I just said that the game is this one, and it's a digital game. It's another advanced version of AI. In the 3D world, we are already creating, albeit for right now, two-dimensional realities that you have no clue as to whether that person who's really talking in that AI, they have like actors and other people that are saying these things, and they're not the real actors. Okay, at least not the real digital actors of this game. You cannot tell the difference anymore. Imagine what kind of technology and intelligence then created this game. That's why I told you way back that this game was created in the 9th dimension, because in the 9th dimension, you were able to take 2D and create 3D out of it.
So are we, you and I, and everybody else here on this planet, AI in 3D?
How do you define AI? What's your definition of AI? What does AI mean to you?
Well, we're just talking about AI right now.
Okay, all right. So, okay, I know that you're asking the question that coming off of me. The answer is yes.
So we
Yes.
are AI in 3D. Okay.
We're consciousness
Okay.
playing in the game of a 3D advanced intelligence game. Yes.
Okay. Let me note here something so I don't forget, because we've done a lot of podcasts and I forget to ask your information there, and because I'm carrying away with talking and say, gosh. So remind me about that before we say, hey, Sergei, my book or my...
Okay. So
But-
you want the way that, so let me just get to that.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking. The
Yeah.
way to reach out to me, there's a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
The best way is to go through a website or a community that I created online. It's called playground.francoromero.com, and Franco's with a C. Okay. Another way is to reach me through my website, which is just simply francoromero.com. And then my book is called The Closet Spiritualist, which talks a lot in more detail about a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about and a lot of other stuff that I never get around to. And I should be coming out with my second and third books here. The second one probably by the end of the year, and the third one by early spring of next year.